The Road is about a man and his son traveling in a harsh post-apocalyptic world. Based on the book by Cormac McCarthy, the film features a lead performance by Viggo Mortensen and a slew of surprising faces, in one of the most grim examples of the subgenre. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and I am joined as always by Tara.
Hello.
And we're on a long road.
Has it been a long road?
It has been a long road.
Getting from there to here.
I should know better than to reference the theme song from Star Trek Enterprise. Welcome everyone. It's a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a movie we watched. Coming up on this episode, we are talking about The Road. In fact, this is the start of our little mini post-apocalyptic season. We're doing 4 episodes, all with post-apocalyptic movies, and this was one of the obvious picks that we hadn't done before, which I thought we should do. I saw this in theaters when it came out. It came out in 2009. I saw it in the UK. It came out in like February 2010, so that's when I saw it. But it's a 2009 movie directed by John Hillcoat. It's based on a book by Cormac McCarthy, who I think just passed away like last year, maybe?
A couple of weeks ago, I want to say.
Was it a couple of weeks ago? Oh, I knew it was recently. I don't know if it was that recent, but fair enough.
Maybe I'm wrong. I heard in passing when I told someone I was watching the Road, they're like, oh, the author just died a few weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah, it was definitely recent-ish, yeah. So, it's a post-apocalyptic story. Viggo Mortensen plays a father, and then his son is played by Kodi Smit-McPhee, and they are just traveling down the road. They're going south because it's warmer there, and everything's barren, and there's never an outright reason given for why the apocalypse happened. You know, they never give a direct, like, oh, it was nuclear war, or it was extreme climate change suddenly happened, or whatever. They don't go into it. It's very vague, and we're in this world. There's some flashbacks, but that's the movie. It's them traveling and trying to survive and just seeing how harsh this world is. So that's the basic gist. We'll keep it spoiler free until we warn you, of course, and we'll get into it. But had you seen this before?
I actually had seen, I want to say like the first hour of it before. It was just one of those ones that was on TV, and I was in a place where it was on, and I didn't like want to fully commit to watching it because I already missed some, or I guess, I don't know, but I couldn't help but notice it on TV.
Yeah.
But I remember certain specific scenes, mostly ones to do with women.
Because Viggo is credited simply as man, and she is credited as woman. He's his wife, who's not in the bulk of the movie. She's only in flashbacks. So I guess I'll just ask the question. What did you think of The Road?
I thought it was one of the most dour films I've seen in a while. This movie but like you could have made this black and white and it wouldn't have made a heck of a difference. I think that it is definitely a good, maybe the most, like, I would say accurate, but it feels more realistic as far as like a post-apocalyptic world and surviving in that, what that would look like or what that would be like, versus something that's a bit more fun. But that being said, I would rather watch Waterworld again. It's way more fun.
It's a very dour, sad, depressing movie with only the glimmer of hope, and you have to really be looking for the glimmer to really capture it.
The movie doesn't give you a lot of them, so
it's very depressing. It's dark in places. It's a 100 or so minutes tour of misery. And,
I would say that it's good. It's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, no, it's definitely got a lot of strong direction in it. The performances from the lead actors are all really, really solid. Because the kid especially, like, he feels like he's acting younger than he should be, but he's also been raised in this world where he's not went to school with other kids, and he's not been allowed to mature in the same way that kids in the real world do. So he comes, he's still saying "papa," and he's still and he feels a bit too old for that. But yeah, he's
Yeah, and he reaches up like for his dad, a lot,
yeah.
like a young kid would, like, pick me up kind of a thing. Like you just notice little body language like that, like, oh, he's never. Well, he's also like his dad's constantly protecting him all the time, so like he is a baby.
And he does need to, because this world is that harsh. Like that's not him overreacting. We'll get into all that good stuff, and there's some pretty famous cameos or small parts, which I won't spoil until we get spoilers. But there is some faces that pop up throughout the movie. The director John Hillcoat, he did a movie with Guy Pearce called The Proposition a few years before this, I think, and then he did a movie called Lawless a few years after this, which was like wasn't a western, but it was like set during like Prohibition gangster kind of times.
Yeah, I know that movie.
Yeah, it had a pretty all-star cast type. In fact, it was only 1 year after this. Jeez. But yeah, that is the movie I'm thinking. Yeah, it's the movie, the Tom Hardy, Shia LaBeouf movie with yeah, and also Guy Pearce, funnily enough. Also Jason Clarke and Jessica Chastain.
Love him.
Well, Gary Oldman's in that goddamn movie.
That's an all-star cast.
That thing is stacked. It's a shame the movie was quite boring, but it was stacked. I'll give it that. Yeah, obviously this has source material, which I think, to be fair, maybe at least the proposition I think also had source material to work on. I think I like the movie. I really like the music in the movie. I think the music does a lot, especially in a few key moments, to really like elevate what's going on and give it some atmosphere. I will say though that the movie doesn't really have much of a structure. It kind of progresses in like segments where, okay, this is the segment where they encounter this thing or this bad person or this thing that's going on, and they have their encounter and it wraps up, and then it's time for the next segment. And there's less like a progression really over the movie that feels like an arc, and it feels like a typical 3-act structure, and it's more just, here's a series of about 7 or 8 bits that are all strung together with these two characters.
Oh, there are bits in this movie, all right. It has made my spreadsheet.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about. I forgot that, yes, there is. I told Tara there was not any front nudity in this, and technically it's not front, but there is a scene where Viggo Mortensen's got into a lake and he's naked from behind, and his dangly bits can be seen through his legs, fairly well, in fact. So,
yes.
But if you want a good look at them, go watch Eastern Promises. Because
I know that one's on my to watch list.
I'll
probably watch it tonight. Just kidding. Okay.
I don't know. Just sometimes I'll watch that tonight, especially since it's already kind of late. I'm like, what? You're going to make a night of it? Get some candles lit, put on Eastern Promises.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice movie to go to sleep to. I mean, it's a Cronenberg film, right?
This joke's probably too far. I'm not going to say it.
Nice.
I'm not going to say it, but just be knowing that it was about to get very lewd. Anyway.
What a surprise.
That's surprising. I never get lewd. I'm a gentleman and an upstanding citizen.
Scotsman,
sure. I don't know why I'm debating that part. I've always that's just, yes, of course I'm not. That's factual. Anyway, so yeah, I think the movie's good, but I don't think it's perfect. But I do think when it's nailing what it's going for, I think it is maybe some of the best moments of any post-apocalyptic movie. But then when I look at it as a whole, and like I think about the actual experience of the whole movie, it doesn't quite add up to like a full movie experience that I love. So it's kind of,
yeah,
you know, it's I guess I'm feeling a bit mixed on it because of that. I'd say I'm overall in the positive, but it's not quite the knockout the park that there's some early scenes that made me think on the first viewing anyway that I thought it was going to be like really special. I think as it is, it's got some really special elements and moments. Like there's
Yeah.
early on in the first like 10 minutes, there's like a narration, and this happens every so often where Vigo narrates some stuff, but he's basically just explaining the status of the world, and like the main theme comes in, and like this piano with like I don't know if it's like a cello that's like backing it, and it's just so moody and it's so good and sad and just kind of like this, like you feel like you're in the post-apocalypse. It's so good. But then, like I say, the progression is kind of like, it's this sort of episodic structure almost of them encountering different things, and it's just not as satisfying as a movie overall, I think, because of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's some good villains in it, like the things that you're trying to avoid that you might not just survival in the environment, but also obviously people. It's very
A lot of the
Go ahead.
people who have survived are not too nice.
Which is what you expect in a post-apocalyptic
Yes.
movie. But like I compared to earlier, it's not like Waterworld where you have like a really fun villain and all these I don't know, these
goofy,
elements of
no.
things that you have. It's not goofy at all. And so it is very much almost like watching like a season of The Walking Dead or something. We're just okay, now we gotta go to this point, just when we have some hope. It's now we gotta move again, and it's reminding you how dour everything is, and things just keep progressively getting worse and worse. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot of weight while you watch the film.
I think notably though, it's not stretched out over several seasons of a TV show, so it doesn't have that same.
No,
like
it does benefit from that.
Yeah, it makes its points. It's concise. It says what it's going to say. Yeah, we'll get into everything, but I think we'll just we'll give the spoiler warning so we can talk about everything that goes on in here, and we'll get into it. So the backstory, which is told through kind of some flashbacks, and when we say backstory, it's not a backstory of the world. It's more just the experience of like Viggo and his wife and his young son, and like what they were like when things were happy, what they were like when things were deteriorating, and kind of like the big dramatic kind of like ending to that previous status quo. And this movie in a lot of ways is kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of The Mist, in that it's kind of about losing hope and how even in the darkest of times you have to keep hope. And the backstory is very much that the wife, played by Charlize Theron, so big name to get in that role, how she just completely loses hope, and she wants to commit suicide with her whole family, like a lot of other families are doing, because things are getting that bad. And then there's scenes in this movie where they go into a barn and there's an entire family who are all hanging, and it's not, no one's murdered them. This is something they've done to themselves, because it's better than the ulterior, which is trying to scrounge for food in a world full of cannibals and rapists and whatever else is out there. So, super dark. I mean, what did you make of all this, like the wife stuff?
This is the stuff I remember from the first half viewing I had before. I remember thinking that she was just awful. Like Viggo is supposed to be having like all these flashbacks of her being like, and there are some of them being like in love together and like being sexy with each other and stuff like that. But like every time I see her, I'm just like, get her off the screen. I hate this. She's bringing me down even more from a movie that's already like so much weight is on me from watching it.
I think, and I think that's kind of intentional, because I think like his position, because there's like one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is a scene about, I don't know, half hour in or so, but about a third in, where he basically chooses to let go of her as a memory. And that's not to say that he doesn't think about her again, because he does, but he makes this choice to go out and like throw her photograph away and throw his wedding ring away. This idea that holding on to the memory of her is actually damaging for him and his son, because she, by the end, represented giving up, and all it's doing is like sort of like making them sad and stuff. So he has to like let her go. I love the music during that scene as well, might I add.
It's quite good, and like it takes place right after, the kid saying he wishes he was with mom, and then Viggo's like, "You mean dead?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." And so like, okay, we need to forget your mom.
Well, which is kind of the point of the movie, is Viggo trying to inspire his son that even as bad as things are, you can't just give up. You have to, like, as he puts it later, we have to carry the fire,
Mm-hmm.
like, on the inside.
The will to live, the will to
Yes.
survive.
You have to keep hope. You have to keep all these things. And it's got a little bit of that. Bizarrely, maybe this is because I love the Terminator, but it made me think a little bit of Terminator 2.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's points in this movie where Vigo's so suspicious of anyone they might encounter, but the kid's like, no, this person needs help. We should help them. It reminded me a lot in the extended version of T2, where Sarah Connor just wants to destroy the Terminator that's there to help them, and John Connor's like, no, we don't do that. Like, he's useful and I care about him. How about we listen to my ideas? So I think what I'm getting at is that it's the idea that the world might get better again because people that are not as cynical as Viggo Mortensen's generation, who lived in the world of before and grew up and build a new society in this new horrible world. There's a hope. He represents the hope of the future, kind of thing.
Right. No, I like that. I think it does pay off quite well at the end as well. But I think the the kid, almost like the kid from The Day the Earth Stood Still or something, because he's only ever known so much, and you would think this kid would be way worse off since he's was born after the apocalypse had started already, and hasn't really known anything except for the love of his father and trying to survive and what life is like. But he's still like, even though all he's known is to be afraid of people, he still wants to know that he's better than those other people, that they're the good guys.
Yeah. And that's something he asks a couple times. He's like, are we the good guys? And Viggo's like, yeah. Are we always going to be the good guys? And you can kind of see the gears in Viggo's eyes sort of like turning and being like, he's not sure if he can make that promise, because at some point he might have to hurt someone that maybe doesn't deserve it so that they can eat or so that they can survive or whatever it may be. I think that's obviously one of the main themes it's playing with. And to go back to the wife, which we're kind of trying to talk about, is she is this depressing character. Like, there's the scene that right before we get the scene of him giving up the ring, and that is the memory of the night she left. At least I think that's where it took place in the movie. And she's like, okay, you're not willing to kill all three of us. Fine, go south where it's warmer and try and survive, but like, I'm done. And she just like walks into the night. Like, she takes off like some of her clothes and just walks out into the darkness.
Yeah, it's definitely winter out there as well.
Yeah, so she's going out there to freeze to death. And she has one of probably the darkest lines in the whole movie, where she's like, they're going to find us and they're going to rape me and then rape your son and then eat all of us. And that's a super dark line. If you didn't get how severe things were in this world by this point in the movie, like, that just kind of spells it out for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have any speculation as to what the apocalypse was?
Not particularly. So the opening narration, when Viggo's talking about it, he says that it was a flash of light, which I think is intentionally vague, but obviously if you want to believe that was a nuclear bomb, like, that could be. That's what that could be. But it could also be like a slow solar flare of some sort of like sun event or something. Maybe. I don't know.
It seems like there's fires outside immediately. And there's also like random tremors that happen in the earth.
Yeah.
That also maybe from like a giant nuclear bomb or something could have caused, I don't know.
Or multiple.
Something like that. Yeah.
I mean, if you told me if, let's say, 20 nuclear bombs all landed like in one country, like, would it cause earthquakes? It might.
I mean, yeah, fracking causes earthquakes. Taylor Swift concerts cause earthquakes. So.
Yeah, she must be stopped. I agree. She's a menace to society.
Tickets are just too damn much.
It's unsafe. Like, those structures might not be able to withhold everything, so they have to stop doing it. That's just the rule. Or do it under like COVID rules, where you can only have like a third of the people, and they'll have to be spread out, so there's no earthquakes.
I don't know. I heard that her concerts were showing up on the Richter scale.
I hope the foundation in those buildings is solid. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we're built for that here in California.
Good point. Good. Yeah, but what about what about like Philly?
I know. I was in the middle of Virginia the first year I lived there, and there was an earthquake, and everyone was like, "But there's no fault lines here. What was the earthquake from?" And the suspected cause was fracking.
Oh well.
So that's fun. That's not dour.
Yeah, but anyway, so the opening narration, though, when he's talking about all this, he's explaining that he thinks it's October, but he doesn't really know because he's not kept a calendar in some time. So it's just kind of vaguely this time of year. And we get introduced to that he's just surviving with his son. They're just going down the road. There's cannibals. There's people who will, do all sorts of things to them if they find them. And they're just traveling and trying to stay out of anyone's sights. It's like a super dark, grisly future. And one of the first encounters they have in the movie is like this band of raiders. And I'm calling them raiders because that's what games like Fallout and movies like Mad Max have taught me. These are raiders. But
they're very Mad Max-like because they are in a car or in some kind of vehicle.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of those operating, obviously, in this future. So they're going down this tunnel and they come out, and it's like a horror movie almost when they all come out. And it's so Viggo and the son hide in the woods, and this guy goes out for a piss and sees them when he's out there. And Viggo, and this is actually also very Mad Max now that I think about it, is that it establishes that Viggo's got a gun, but he's only got 2 bullets in it, and he's never going to find any more ammo in this whole movie. There was 2 bullets in that gun, and that's all he's got. And he ends up using one of them here because this guy goes for the kid. So he has to shoot them. But this guy's like, oh, why don't you come with us? You look hungry. You know, why don't you and the boy come with us? But the guy looks like he looks like he's been eating human meat. You know, he looks like he's got some issues.
Viggo's like, wait, what you doing? And he's like, we got food. He's like, you don't have food.
You got meat, but I'm not tempted to call it food.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the first big encounter. It's a first big moment of tension, and sets up kind of the tone that a lot of these scenes are going to be having for the rest of the film, and also establishes why they can't just trust people on a whim. Like anyone that is going to turn out to be okay, like there's going to be some trepidation to like get to that point with anyone else.
Yeah.
So,
and it kind of bookends the scene at the very end also, where the kid, has to see this side of humanity too, where the guy's like, come with us. You can be with other people. You can eat. Like, it's not, he's got to know that the difference between someone who genuinely means it and somebody who's trying to lure him in for other reasons.
Yeah, he's got to judge it. Yeah. So before we get to the other sort of main segments, I'll just sort of just general wandering stuff that I think's worth mentioning. There's a moment where they find like a soda machine, and he gives him what's clearly his first ever can of Coke, and the kid is like almost like doesn't like it because he's like, oh, it's bubbly. I don't know how to handle this.
It's probably the sweetest thing he's ever tasted.
Probably, yeah. It's probably like a hit to his senses.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But he's a kid, so I'm sure the sugar was good.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And it's the sort of thing where I'm like, do you really want to get him addicted to sugar? And I'm like, let's face it, this is probably the only can of this he's ever going to have.
It's the most calorie-dense thing he's ever eaten.
He's probably never going to touch anything like this ever again. So, yeah, but there's little moments like that.
Yeah.
You see them go past like certain stores at certain points. I will say for a pretty low-budget movie, it looks... effects wise, like they do a good job with making it feel like I mean, most of it obviously is like just a road with forest around it or something, but there are like some stores that are kind of derelict. There's at one point there's a bridge with like a truck stopped on it. There is at least a few like more prominent mall looking areas, not too many, but there's a few, just enough to make it feel like, oh, these places still exist, like it's not completely ignoring them. But it does make sense that they're sticking to like less likely to be populated areas, given how dangerous it is. So.
Yeah, and there's some environmental factors too. Like we brought up the earthquakes before. Like random trees just fall down all the time, And
Mm.
the actual trees themselves, everything looks like they're dead, like burnt or whatever. Like everything's gray. So like the environment looks, special effects wise, I mean, it looks very real.
Yeah, and most of the animals are dead. That's something he says at the start as well. There's obviously some exceptions that we see, but yeah, by and large, there's not like a lot of wildlife running around. Which makes sense if people have turned to cannibalism. It makes sense. There's not a lot of animals just easy to go grab. So yeah, I mean, I guess we talk about some of the other big sort of set pieces and like things they go through. One of the more gnarly ones that isn't my favorite in the movie, just because it goes a little bit over the top. Is they find like a farmhouse and they think, oh, this seems all right, and there's like a cellar door in the kitchen, and they look inside and there's basically a bunch of people who are all really skinny and sick, and some of them are missing in limbs, some of them have had their eyes cut out, and it basically they realize that they're in like some cannibal's lair, and this is like these are all prisoners who are being eaten like slowly.
Yeah, one of them says that they're going to take us to the smokehouse, which I think means they're going to turn us into jerky
Mm.
or
And
something like that.
and this family come home and like they have to hide in the house and try and get away when no one's looking. That actual moment towards the end where they're having to escape is quite tense, and that's pretty good. But it definitely, I think, because everything else was so restrained up until that point, actually seeing all these people with like the makeup and stuff was definitely like, oh shit, I'm like watching like a movie now, as opposed to a more serious like drama that it felt like before.
No, definitely. It turned into like Texas Chainsaw Massacre all of a sudden,
Just for a
which
second,
I was okay with. Actually, I don't know. I was okay with that. But they go upstairs into a bathroom, and there's like a face, like half a face in the sink.
Mm. Yeah, and this is like one of the two moments in the movie where Viggo takes the gun and like puts it in his son's mouth. The idea being that if they're going to get caught, he'd rather end his son's life quickly so he doesn't have to suffer what they're going to do to him.
And he's only got one bullet now.
Yeah, so he can't do it to himself. Which is really dark though. That's the option. Like that's seen as the better option. Like this is why he has to keep this bullet in case he has to quickly kill his son, just so he doesn't have to go through being tortured, possibly raped, possibly whatever else. You know?
Yeah.
Really, really sick and dark stuff. But yeah, that's like one very segmented bit. They come across this farmhouse, they go in, they have their little like scary adventure, and they break out and they hide, and that's it. That's the segment from start to finish. So that's one. Another one is they're going through like where where Viggo grew up. So they go by his old family house, and the kid has this moment where he thinks he sees another kid, and he goes running to talk to them. And it's kind of left up in the air at that point, like if he was just hallucinating because he wants to like see another kid, he wants to have a friend, you know, a peer, someone that's his own age.
Yeah, I never really thought that he was hallucinating. I thought it was more just like if there is a kid, then Viggo still is just like, I don't trust any kid, you know, because that kid's probably with an adult, and that adult might kill you or me or whatever.
Yeah. It makes complete sense. There's just little things though where he's like when he's inside this old family home, he like puts the cushion on the couch and he sits in the couch, and it's clearly the comfiest thing he's sat in probably years at this point.
Yeah, he like flips it, and you can actually see some color on the other side, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, and he sits down and he's like, "Oh, this is nice," and
familiar, you know.
Yeah, and the kid goes to wait outside, which I thought was a bit risky, given how protective he is. I'm like, you're just gonna let him go outside on his own? That feels like, you know, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, a little bit.
But sure enough, he does. Do
we understand why the kid wants to be outside and not there?
Well, because he's looking at the old photos of his dad and stuff. I was getting the feeling that he was almost uncomfortable looking at the world from before and like seeing like his dad in the normal world, because it kind of weirds him out.
Yeah.
Well, because one of the big things that happens about halfway or so through is they find a house, but more specifically, they find this bunker, which someone stocked for the apocalypse.
So there's a prepper.
Yeah. and it's just this bunker that's got like a metal door that they can seal from the inside, and it's got bunk beds, and it's got like tons of food and supplies. Basically, if anything, when it got to this, like I almost like, as much as like I get the purpose of it in the movie because it's a chance for them to sort of almost live like kings, and it is literally in this world a gold mine to find a place like this. This is like the because I think right before this part of the movie, they're like in like a truck, or they're like they're at a campsite, and he's literally like next to his dad saying, "I'm hungry," and he's like, "I know," and he can't give his son anything to eat because they don't have any food. They're getting like so desperate at this point.
Yeah, I think he looks in the mirror at like just before this too, and he's like, "Look how skinny we are."
Yeah, because
like even the kid's surprised at how thin that they've gotten.
Yeah,
when he sees his reflection.
And when they find this bunker, Viggo like trims his beard and gets all fancy dressed in a suit, and they have a nice dinner together. And obviously, they're eating stuff that they've probably not eaten, since before the apocalypse. Yeah, they got tinned fruit, they got tinned everything. They're living life large. I think this whole segment was kind of weird for me because I get the narrative purpose of it, but the movie's painted such a bleak, like everything's gone, everything's desolate, that this almost did feel like too much of a gold mine to find. Like it was like, oh, that's like really lucky. I think when I was watching this, I was expecting after like a minute of them looking at all these supplies of like the kid to wake up and it'd be like a dream or something because it feels too happy almost. Don't get me wrong, they still put the misery in because as soon as Viggo hears a noise, he's like, okay, we have to leave. And he's like, no, but what about all this stuff? We can stay here for literally years.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like it would be years, but it wouldn't be a lifetime of food.
No, that's true.
So they would have to keep moving. And the noise that they hear is a dog outside. And if there's a dog, then Viggo's like, they're going to find us. Like the dog's going to find the shelter, or like if there's a dog, it's because it's a hunting dog. Like it's looking for people or something.
Yeah.
So,
which turns out to be not
he's
true.
He's like, all right, it's time for us to go.
Yeah, that turns out to be not true though, because we see what this dog is at the end. It's actually the family that are following them.
Yes.
But like that's his thinking. That's like his cynical. And to be fair, when I say I'm not criticizing him here, the world they're in calls for this level of like paranoia.
Paranoia. Yeah.
It absolutely does. And there are some interesting moments here where like, he's drinking booze and stuff, and like the son is just kind of looking at him like just mesmerized that he's never seen his dad be this happy. And he's like, you think I'm from a different world. You don't understand. Like
he might be stoned at this point too when he says that, because it kind of sounds like a stoned thought. I bet you think I'm from another world, kid.
But it's also accurate in this case because this kid did not see the world from before. It's this very different life he's leading. So he doesn't want to leave this stuff behind because, and even if they do have to move, like they can only carry so much. So the argument, I guess, should be they should stay here for, let's say there's 5 years of food here. They should stay here for 4 years. If they can carry about a year's worth on their little trolley thing, which is what they do, they take like a trolley and they've got some like big jugs of water that they're taking with them, and they're off they go. I'm like, if anything, just having this big, huge like cart that you're carrying with you just makes you look like more of a target because people are like, they've got stuff. At least before they were just carrying like backpacks or whatever. It's like, yeah. These guys don't have anything, but no, they do.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. Like I think it's a little bit of a reminder of like, okay, like there is. I mean, they technically like won the lottery when they find this thing.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, it feels like they win the lottery.
But even when they find a good thing, it can't be a good thing.
It can't last
because there's just too many risks involved. Like Viggo says, like we can't stay, but we have all the stuff, but we can't take it all with us because we can only carry so much, or else we become a bigger target. And if people find out we have food, they may kill us, we're just more of a target now, and we're slower because we have to carry this stuff. We have to hide it all the time. So like, there's just more. It is still pretty dour,
Oh yeah, and I get that the movie wants them to have a happy time together, so that it's like it's not just.
I'm glad they got to clean up also, change of clothes.
But they have to have this happy time together, so it's not just like miserable memories. Like we have to see the kid actually enjoy to be with his father, because it is a big difference. Because he goes from wanting to be with his mother, meaning dead, to
Hmm.
like not wanting his father to die, not wanting to be left alone. Because Viggo starts coughing throughout the film, and it's kind of clear that he's probably dying. Like he's something's wrong. Um,
Yeah, and Vigo, I think we kind of learned he never outright says it, but I think he was a doctor before, so I
mm,
think he also knows like he's running out of time. Because it seems like he's got something like tuberculosis. He's
yeah,
coughing up blood. It looks like tuberculosis. I don't know. But
yeah. Well, in this post-apocalyptic world, I'm not surprised that that's because that's not
yeah.
a huge deal necessarily if someone gets it, in the civilized
No, I mean
world.
there are things. Yeah, there are
Yeah,
things you can do to treat it.
yeah. But obviously, in this world, it's not like he's got a medicine supply that he can.
Yeah, if you get the TB, that's it. You're done.
Yeah. So, like, it's this kind of build, and all these segments that come after this are largely kind of like all there to advance the story of the kid, which is how he views people and how he wants to help people. Because I think the next segment is like when they run into Robert Duvall, who is this
Yeah.
old man who can. He's not completely blind, but he's pretty blind. Like he's kind of walking with a cane. Uh, they make
It's surprising to see an old man in this world, even.
yeah, he's just stumbling. I guess he's just mostly ignored, just because he is just a slow old man. He's no threat to anyone, so he just kind of keeps going. But there's a narrative point set up right at the start of the movie. Viggo sets up that one of the most valuable things in this post-apocalypse is shoes, because everyone's walking everywhere and shoes are falling apart and no one's making any more. So if you have like well conditioned shoes, that's a big deal. And this old man does not. This old man has like bits of cardboard like taped around his feet to like try and protect them. Um, and the kid like wants to have dinner with the old man. He wants to let's not leave him alone. Let's let him you know stay with us tonight when we're at
Hmm.
our fire. And
At least give him some peaches.
yeah, and they have these, they have an exchange while they're sitting at the campfire, and the old man, and he is seemingly just a kind old man who talks about his life and who he lost, and it's this idea that one, not everyone's bad, right? But it also sets up that Vigo, even in the morning, he's like, you know what? No, he goes his own way. He's not staying with us. We're not taking on a third person. Like he's out for himself. You did a nice thing. I gave in and let you have this. But it's clearly establishing that Vigo just will not trust anyone, and the kid is starting to become open to wanting to help the right people and wanting to be kind to people.
Is this the first time that when we meet a stranger that Vigo says, "Why are you following us?" Because he starts saying that to
Yeah, he
like
does.
everybody after a certain point,
He does.
and it just kind of comes off as paranoia. But of course, there is actually someone following them. We find out by the end.
It may. I don't remember if this is the first time, but it might be. It would make sense because everyone before this he hasn't really talked to, so it would make sense this is the first time he says it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's I remember being a little bit like, why would you just assume someone's following you?
And
But
it turns out to be a seed that there actually is some people following him.
like he doesn't. Yeah, he knows someone's following them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next segment is they get to the beach, they get to the coast, right? Because they're going south, but they're sort of like going sort of diagonal towards the coast, so they can then follow the coast down. And I think they're on the east coast, right? Just
I think so. If the map was pointing north, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. But
Which
they
would make the most sense.
they
So.
get to the beach, and there was a scene earlier on with like a lake. That's where they get naked and go into the water. But here, Vigo decides to swim out to this ship. There's like a big, huge cargo ship that's out in the water, but it's like close enough to swim to. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go and swim and see if I can find anything." And I'm like, "This feels risky." And he's like, "Hey, watch over the food and stuff." And the kid falls asleep. But this is actually one of the most tense moments in the movie, like, or one of the most creepy moments, because you just see like there's someone walking like behind where the kid is, and you don't. I mean, this whoever this is might try and kill the kid. They might kidnap the kid, and it turns out they don't. That doesn't happen, but there is a genuine potential of that. And when Vigo comes back, the kid's fallen asleep, and he just fell asleep while all of their stuff was taken away. So
Yeah, I think the kid's like sick at this point also, so that's why like he couldn't help it. Like his body just gave out and he had to sleep.
so Viggo
I
and
think he was running a fever.
Viggo and the kid make chase and try and find whoever it is, and it turns out to be Michael Kenneth Williams, who also just passed away. And Robert Duvall passed away not that long ago.
Oh my god, this movie's cursed.
There's a lot of people in
Viggo.
this movie who have passed away relatively recently, shockingly. But they run up and Viggo sort of confronts them and demands the stuff back, and very quickly it turns into this thing where Viggo makes him strip down and he makes him stand there naked, and it's all this kind of like so that he can't fight back, so that he's sort of like held down because he's just standing there kind of vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they're leaving, and eventually the kid says, "Wait, aren't we going to leave him some food? I think he needs it." And again, it's the kid wanting to act out of kindness. He's wanting to help this person. He's like, "Look, he took the stuff because he needed it. How many things have we done because we needed to do them? Like, we don't have to. Like, he didn't hurt me. Like, we can just give him some food." And Viggo's like, "No, that's for us. We can't give it to anyone." And eventually, the kid breaks through to him, and Viggo agrees begrudgingly to go back. But when they go back, this guy's clothes are still lying in a pile, but he's gone. So the kid just leaves like a can of like pineapple or something on his clothes in the hopes it'll come back and get it. But it really does just kind of like feel kind of eerie. Like, they had their chance to be kind and they lost it, and the kid now will maybe live with this guilt that this guy might have went off and died or something. Like, who knows what happened in these like 20 minutes where they were making this decision. But I think both the Robert Duvall stuff and the Michael Kenneth Williams stuff, they're both building up this idea of the kid and how he views people and how he wants to help people and not just be out for himself.
Yeah, doesn't want to just be the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice.
It's a very
sweet.
powerful scene, and it's very hard to watch him go through all this too, because like I definitely feel super bad for him. And like there's an interesting turn that happens where Viggo's pointing the gun at him and the guy doesn't feel threatened by it. It's not till the kid says, "Dad, please don't kill him," that he suddenly takes it seriously, like, "Oh no, he is capable of shooting me," or something. Like, because he sees the gun and he's not reacting to it really until the kid says,
I think,
"Dad, please don't kill him."
maybe I'm reading into this too much, but maybe there's just an assumption in this world that he doesn't have bullets. Like you can't just go get bullets now.
I think so.
Yeah. But the kid obviously, the fact that the kid says that is like, oh wait, he actually has a bullet, at least one, because the kid wouldn't say that otherwise. So yeah, and it does feel like Viggo goes extra vindictive here to the point where you start to sympathize with Williams's character because he feels scared and Viggo's like just
Viggo's
going
gone
further.
too far.
Yeah.
But also, this is another moment where he's like, "Why are you following us?" And the guy's like, "What are you talking about? I just came across your camp. The kid was out, and that it was an opportunity. You would have done the same kind of a thing."
And the final encounter after this is they're going through like a town and someone starts shooting arrows at them. They have like a nice moment before with a bug where it's like, oh, life exists. But then they start getting shot with arrows and Viggo gets hit in the leg. And when he went to the boat before, he like got a flare gun that was on the boat. So he fires the flare gun at the window where the shooter, and we just see the red light coming from the window, but we don't know if he hit anyone necessarily.
And we hear a woman scream. Yeah.
So he runs up this ramp thing. He goes in the window, and sure enough, this guy was hit in the chest with the flare gun.
His chest, he's just like slightly smoldering and on fire still.
And the woman's just yelling, "F you! Why did you do this?" And I'm like, well, he did it because you were shooting arrows at him. Let's be fair. His motive here was pretty clear.
Yep.
But
and
Viggo,
again, he goes, "Why are you following us?" Yeah.
He asked that again, and she just tells him to F off, basically. So
we live here.
Yeah, and it's after this where they go back to the coast. They're back at the beach because they've never strayed from the coast really, but they've been walking into the town area, and Viggo gets sick, and this is like Viggo like dying effectively.
I'm assuming his wound has gotten bad. Like maybe if you have TB, like you can't properly heal from something like like an arrow to the leg.
At the very least, it did not help.
Yeah, he probably lost a lot of blood, and
yeah,
his body's already fighting something else, so maybe he's not able
I
to
mean,
fully heal.
let's face it, in this world, there's a very good chance it also got infected.
Yeah.
That wound's probably infected. So, he's lying on the beach, and there's this sort of sad scene where
he's got sand in the wound too.
Yeah, and he's the son's like saying, "You promised you wouldn't leave me," and he's like, "No, I want to be here with you too, and one day you'll see me again, but you have to carry the fire," all that stuff. It's a very teary moment. And then we're met with the big Guy Pearce cameo, where Guy Pearce shows up, and he does look quite shady. Like he does. Like he looks. Like, admittedly, does he look any shadier than Viggo does most of the time in this movie? I don't know. I guess that's open for debate. But
no,
he's like,
you get Guy Pearce who's already like a very gaunt man. He's got those kind of hollowish cheekbones. Like he looks like he's from this world.
And he asks, was that your dad? Like, are you okay? Well, this isn't necessarily okay, but he's like, hey, maybe you should come with us. You've got basically two choices: either stay on your own, and if you do, you're going to have to be very careful, or come with us. And he's like, well, are you a good guy? And he's like, yeah, I'm one of the good guys, but how do I know you're one of the good guys? And he's like, well, you don't. You just kind of have to take a shot at it. And this like piano music's playing, and it is kind of like, don't get me wrong, it's also very convenient for him, the character, and for us as an audience for a happy ending, that there's someone good here seemingly ready to take him in at the end. But this has been seeded that someone was following them, and they say that they were following them because I don't know if they specify why, but maybe just the idea that they seemed to know where they were going, and they were hoping, I guess.
It's the mother that we meet, because the mother says that I saw you and I just wanted to know that you were okay or something. So we started following them, like, because she just wanted to make sure the boy was okay.
Yeah, which obviously paints this idea that she's this concerned, good, kind person, and sets that up. Notably, though, he doesn't meet the mother and the other kids until after he's agreed to go with them, because he says, "Do you have kids?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've got a son that's about your age and a daughter." Which, by the way, when they grow up, that daughter's totally going to be his wife, because where else is he going to find a wife in this world?
I didn't even consider that, but I suppose you're right.
I mean, come on, like. His options are limited.
I know. I just didn't think about it.
I mean, if anything, I feel bad for the girl's brother, because like he's not going to have anyone. Like,
maybe they'll both be gay.
I mean, that's not very good for the future of the human race in this world.
Who would want to bring a baby into this world?
That's an excellent point. Actually, that's a very good point. But the whole point is hope, though. The hope is that we can do better. But yeah, so after he says goodbye to his dad's dead body and kisses him, he gets up and he meets the mum. And this is an actress I know as well. She most recently she was in the mum in the Lost in Space TV show, but she's been in other things as well. And
I didn't really recognize her. I did look her up, and I was like, I don't think I've seen any of the stuff she's been in. Yeah. But she is quite a working actress, though.
Oh yeah, she's done tons of stuff. But she's television. Very sympathetic and is like, saying, hey, you don't have to worry anymore. We'll take care of you. I think my only critique of this is that it is maybe just a little too in the saccharine side, because it's like too perfect. Like, I'm not saying that I wanted like an element of, maybe they're still dangerous or anything like that, but just
the father's corpse isn't even cold yet.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really convenient, and I get that. Yes, we know they've been following, and the reason why he made contact now is because they saw the dad was dying, and that he needs help now, so that's why they're stepping in. Like, I get that, I absolutely do, but it does just feel a little bit from a viewer's perspective that the dad's died, and within like a minute of screen time, we have good people ready to take him in a movie that has been nothing but like awful cannibals and rapists the entire time. It just does feel a little bit too easy. Basically, I guess what I'm saying is that there should have been just a little bit where he's on his own, like a little bit where maybe he has to go looking for something, maybe not food, because we know they've got food like in the cart, but like something like maybe he tries to travel a little bit on his own, and maybe we get the sense that there is people following him, and eventually it's more about how they try and make first contact with them without scaring them or something. But it's so quick that it does feel a little too easy. And I think I'm not so I'm a little mixed on the ending because of that. I like the overall point of it, but it is a little bit easy and quick.
I don't mind it, I think, because I've had 2 hours of dread at this point and misery that, and to the point where I watched Viggo die, and it seemed to take like a day for him to, like, from when he was like on the beach laying down turning gray to when like, okay, he's dead. And I was just like, I was already like over it. Like, I was so done with being miserable. So I was very much happy that when the other people showed up.
That's fair.
It's
That's
like, good.
fair.
I'm glad this kid doesn't have to go through too much more, at least.
I do wish there was maybe like more of an emphasis made on like trying to judge if someone's good or not. And I guess it never happens because Viggo just teaches them that everyone's untrustworthy. I mean, you know, because that's his view. But I mean, you said earlier that the first guy that they sort of like have that encounter with that was clearly a cannibal, but he was trying to say, "Hey, come, we've got food," and Viggo like deduces that this is a bad guy. I do kind of wish that after that he sat down with the son and sort of said, "Look, I could just tell, like I could see it in his eyes that he was a bad person." I wish they emphasized that he had to make that judgment call based on instinct and based on how this guy was acting, just to set up that the kid then had to do it at the end with Guy Pearce. Like the idea that he's now been forced into that position and he's going to make the choice that hopefully is correct, that this guy is okay and can be trusted. But
yeah, I suppose. I definitely felt when I was watching the end scene where I was like, because when you see Guy Pearce, he looks very much like everybody else in this world, where I don't know if he's good, but throughout the conversation that they're having, I'm like, I'm pretty sure because of the way he's answering these questions that he is good. Like, he's not just taking advantage of the boy, you know. He came up, he's keeping his distance. He's saying, I don't want your gun. You can keep it. So I think I also make that judgment call that he's good during that scene. So I kind of already buy it.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, it's not so much that about me believing it at the end. I'm more just saying from a narrative like fulfillment of like setting up this idea that we're bookending, because you said it bookends. And I think it
kind of does, yeah.
I think it technically does, but I think it could bookend it more if they really emphasized that it's a similar moment in both scenes where he's effectively having to do what Viggo already did early on, and he's having to use this skill to judge if this person's good or not. And you know, I like that he's rewarded for believing in people. I think that's a nice like sentiment. But like I say, I think it's just all just a bit rushed at the end. That it feels like, oh, we have to get to credits as quickly as possible now. Viggo's dead. So we have to go through this all in the span of about 2.5 minutes, and then that's it.
They've lost their narrator. The movie has to end.
So I do think that hurts it a little bit. So I do think it's a good movie, and I do think it's got some great moments and like some of the peak post-apocalyptic sort of like atmosphere and mood that I've seen in any type of this genre. But there are these things that kind of hold it back. I think the episodic structure of it, the rushed ending that feels a little too saccharine, you know, based on the tone we've had up until that point. Like, I'm not saying I don't want it to be happy and hopeful. I do. Like, I think the movie needs the hopefulness at the end. It's just
a little. I mean, they're still going to have their own trials and tribulations that are going to be the same as what we've seen already.
I'm talking about the mood in that final scene. It's just a little too saccharine. The piano's getting all happy. It feels just a bit too perfect. I think you can have hope that's a little flawed, right? But ultimately is still a very good thing and hopeful. I think you could have that at the end as opposed to all of a sudden it's perfect. And because that feels much like them finding the bunker with all the food and supplies in it, that feels like winning the lottery. This at the end felt like he was winning the lottery again. In a way that felt a little like immersion breaking for me as Tara's roommates drop plates or whatever that was.
Yeah, I definitely would say that the movie is good. I think that I don't want to watch it again, mostly because of, I guess just the overall dourness and the grayness of it. And I'm good. You know, I've seen it 1.5 times now. I think I think if you want me to make a list of post-apocalyptic movies, it's likely that this will be on there. But I don't have any. I don't really get much enjoyment out of it, so I think I can rate it.
Oh, go on then. Yes, that's what we're getting to.
I'm actually gonna go 6.5, just because it's not quite for me. Even I know it's well done, and there's definitely some standout moments in it, and some great acting, but like I just felt miserable watching it. So I'm still I'm still gonna go a little, not great, but good.
I mean, I'm not going much. I'm just going with a straight 7. I think it's
Mhm.
good, but I wish it had more of a strong like through line and like I mean, it feels mean to say more of a plot because I don't necessarily think it needs more of a plot per se, but just maybe like a goal in mind that they're really other than just generally going south because it's not like there's a specific destination really. I mean, I think early on he does say we have to try and get to the coast, and they do get to the coast, but it never feels like they're trying to accomplish something specifically, and it's very episodic, like I say, in these segments. I do think there maybe could have been just a stronger arc that I could really appreciate and get a lot out of by the end. However, some of the individual moments are very good. The music's great. It looks like a very natural, realistic post apocalyptic world. The performance from Viggo is good. The performance from the kid is good. Some of the guest actors who pop in for like one scene are good. Like, there's a lot to like here. And if you want a good sort of more down to earth post apocalypse, it is really solid at being that. But it is missing that extra kind of like narrative spark. And this is probably something that in the translation from book to movie, where the book probably works in this way with just different chapters. But as a movie, it would the thing that would take it that one step above is that more through line structure that's building up, and it feels like the arc that the kid's going through is more defined, so that when we get to the end and he's having to make this call, there's more stakes in that moment. But you know,
Yeah.
that's what it is. But it's still good though. I still recommend it for this subgenre because there's a lot in here that's definitely worth checking out. But it is not cheery. You have to know that going in. It's going to be a miserable time.
No, this is not a boy and his dog.
I mean, that's not that
Which is
cheery.
also kind of miserable, but the last act is like crazy enough to where you're like, well, that was fun.
It was okay. I don't know. You liked that more than I did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay.
This
All
is
right.
more like no blade of grass misery.
Yeah.
And with a birthing scene.
Oh yeah, the flashback. I mean, that's okay. Yeah.
It's pretty awful.
Yeah, but, it's nothing compared to No Blade of Grass, though.
I mean, it was awful for that one was more awful for you to watch, I'm sure, but as a woman watching Charlize Theron like want to die in that scene, I was pretty awful. I'm like, God, I don't think I'm ever having kids.
All right. But there you go. That's the road. Kicking off post-apocalypse season. Next week we're looking at Threads, which was the vote winner for this batch. Our patrons voted between a few options and picked Threads, so we'll be looking at that.
I have no idea what this movie is.
Nor do I. I had never heard of it until I went looking for post-apocalyptic movies, but it does have a bit of cult movie status. People do seem to recommend it in the post-apocalyptic subgenre, so we'll see how that goes, but that's coming next week. You can, of course, support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep it coming. And, of course, you can like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. All those things on YouTube help. But that is the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.